Hello and welcome to this demo video on this new painted canvas material. If you're watching this video, you're probably interested in buying or you've already bought this material. So this is the file that you get once you buy it, and I'm going to take you through how the material works and what you can expect from it. To use this material, you're going to open a new file. What I've done for the canvas is just take a cube, remove one face, and scale it down in one dimension. And once you do that, you can just bevel it and solidify it. So we're going to use Cycles at first, but the material works in both render engines. So to use the material, you have to append it. So File, Append. So you open the file, go to Material, and append the one that says append, which is like the base material. So once you do that, it should be here in your scene. And if you give the material to an object, it'll have that material. I'm just going to set up a couple things. So that's how you get the material in your scene. Now we can go to UV editing. And I'm going to unwrap this, and then we can take this and scale it down a bit. There you go. The way I had this is scaled in the Y direction. There you go. There is the material. So this is the painted canvas material. As you can see, it basically has two layers. One is the canvas with these like dots, those little holes, and the other is the paint, which covers the canvas. The material works in both Cycles and Eevee. As you can see, it works pretty well in both render engines. But I still prefer Cycles. Now I'm going to go over each of these features, which you can customize, of the shader. First of all, this is the setup that I'm using. So what this does is that this first node group creates a vector map with the brushstrokes, so you can plug that vector into any image, and it creates this brushstroke version of that image. So as you can see, this is the original image, and this is with the brushstrokes. So the advantage of this is that you can use any image, and as you can see, it still creates that brushstroke, that new brushstroke version of that image, which is pretty neat. And this is very useful. So that's why I have two different node groups, because I need this separate one to affect the color and also affect this other node group. So, other than the vector, it creates this brushstroke map, which is what we'll be using to determine where the brushstrokes are relative to this color. So as you can see, it fits. Alright, now, there are many options to customize here, but we'll go over them later. Now this second node group, what it does is it affects different parts of the texture of it. So we're plugging this into roughness, clear coat, alpha, normal, and clear coat normal, right? So it's basically taking this brushstroke map that the other node created, and we're making different maps for it. There we go. So now I'll go over the different options that we have. So the first one is the brushstroke scale. This normally ranges between 0 and 4, right? So the smaller it is, the bigger the brushstrokes are going to be. So for example, here at 0.1, you can see that the brush strokes are very big, they're very broad. We can go even smaller, right? And now if we go to, say, 3, they're going to be a lot smaller. So this gives a bit of a more detailed image with these small brush strokes. And 1 is what I consider like the base scale. Now we have our second option, which is brushstroke orientation. This ranges from -1 to 1. And so if we go to -1, you can see that they're mostly horizontal. So most brushstrokes are going to be from left to right or right to left. So it's horizontal. And if we go all the way up to 1, there are going to be vertical brushstrokes. Anything in between is going to be basically a random combination between horizontal and vertical brushstrokes, and everything in between, of course. So if we go to 0.5, they're going to be mostly vertical, but we will have some horizontal brushstrokes around. And 0 is, of course, a random orientation for each brushstroke. The next feature that we can see is large noise. So I've split the noise into 3 categories: large, medium, and small. Large noise is basically referring to the strokes themselves. So if we increase that, you see that the brush strokes are a lot more noisy. They encompass a bit of a smaller area, and you're mixing between the original colors of the image. So the less you have of that, if you go to 0, each brushstroke is going to be a single point in the image. Now we have medium noise, which refers to the smear of the stroke. So as you can see, if I increase the medium noise, we're going to be overlapping brush strokes and overlapping colors in between different strokes. Whereas if it's 0.1, each brush stroke is going to be one defined brush stroke without much overlapping in between. Now if you go to small noise, this is the blur, which is the blurring between brush strokes. So if I increase this, as you can see, there's a lot more blurring. It's a bit of a blurrier image. So this is completely blurry, and 0 would mean no blur. And finally, we have a seed for the brush strokes. So if, say, you just don't like this particular brush stroke, you can just find a seed where you do like it. So that's for the brush strokes. We also have these features for the texture. So these are the ones you'll probably be messing around with the most, because this defines how you want your paint to look on the canvas. Brushstroke strength refers to the strength of the bump created by the brush. So if we go to 0, there's going to be no bump. Absolutely no bump. So as you can see, normal map wise, it's just the canvas, no brush. It can be a very nuanced bump, very small, and it can be very strong. So here it's so strong that you can barely notice the canvas underneath, and it looks, yeah, a lot thicker, the paint. So yeah, this also kind of affects how thick of a layer of paint you have on top of there. So yeah. Now, canvas strength does the same but for the canvas. So here you can kind of see it. So if we go back, you can't really see any of the canvas. It's too light, right? If you zoom in, you can kind of see it. Obviously, if you go to 0, there's no canvas. It will be just the paint. And if we go to 1, we have a much stronger effect there. So if we go to 1 and we zoom out, we can still kind of see these bumps in some areas where there's a visible canvas. So these two are very important to determine the look that you're going for. Alright, the next feature is canvas scale. So similar to the brushstrokes, if I go smaller, you'll see a larger space between these points. And if I go with a larger scale, it's gonna look a lot smaller, the canvas. All right. This next feature is how much exposed canvas you want. So basically here we have some areas with just paint, some areas with canvas, and some with a mix in between, right? And 0 would be no exposed canvas, so it's just paint. And 1 would be all of the painting is showing some canvas, right? And so as I decrease this number, more and more areas are going to be occupied by paint instead of canvas. And finally, we have our last option, which is wetness. So it's how wet you want your painting to look. If it's 0, it's basically dry paint. And if it's 1, it is wet paint. So you can see a lot more reflections there. So that's it for all the options we have. I'm going to go into the original file. So this is what you get when you download the file, when you buy it. And so here I'll show you basically different things you can make. So here, for this material, as you can see, it's mostly vertical, right? 0.5 brushstroke orientation. Remember, it goes from -1 to 1. The brushstroke scale is a bit higher, so there's smaller brushstrokes. You've got no large noise, some medium noise, very little blur. I remember I didn't like the original seed, which is 0, so I just changed it until I liked it. We've got very little exposed canvas, as you can see. That's just 0.3. And yeah, that's it. And here, I kind of wanted to show you why I made this 3-node setup instead of just 1, a single shader, because, well, say you want just a plain color, you want a white canvas, you just leave this white. And if you want an image underneath, you just plug this in. But what if you want some features to be affected by the image itself? So here, for example, I wanted this Blender logo to be painted over an empty canvas. So I wanted it to have no canvas exposed where there's paint, and I wanted to, wherever it's white, to have the canvas exposed. So what I did was create this image, just plug this image in, and then separate the saturation. So wherever it's white, it's going to be black, and wherever it isn't white, it's going to be white. Invert that. So we're going to have, wherever it's white, we have just white, right? And then use this as a map for my exposed canvas. So wherever this image is white, we're going to have this exposed canvas. And wherever it isn't white, the canvas will not be exposed. So I plug that into exposed canvas. And if we go in here, you can see that we have exposed canvas where there's white, and no exposed canvas where there isn't white. And here we've got some white brushstrokes, but if we want to eliminate that, we just need our brushstroke strength to be related to our saturation, right? And so in here, there's no brushstrokes, it's just white canvas. And out here we've got no canvas, just brushstrokes. So there's a lot of stuff you can do with that. You can play around with that. You can even make your custom map. Say you want this to be you want this area to have a stronger brushstroke. So you can just paint it out in a texture map. Plug that map into brushstroke strength, and you'll have stronger brushstroke here and a weaker brushstroke everywhere else. So that is it for this demo video. I hope you enjoy. I hope you buy it, and yeah, I hope you like it.